Ohio is still up for grabs.
From the Battelle Studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Mark Niquette, reporter for Bloomberg News. Chrissy Thompson, political reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Bob Clegg, Republican strategist. And Sandy Tice, executive director of Progress Ohio.
8 weeks before the election, and the race for Ohio's 18 presidential electoral votes remains up for grabs. After the conventions, Hillary Clinton had opened up a lead, but that's gone now. The Real Clear average of polls shows Clinton with only a 1-point lead over Donald Trump. The latest Quinnipiac poll, which is included in that average, actually has Trump leading. Of course, both candidates remain unpopular, and with less than motivated voters, turnout is key, and the key to turnout is organization, something that Clinton has a big advantage over Trump here in Ohio. Mark Niquette, for a while there, it looked like Hillary Clinton was pulling ahead. She had developed like a 4 or 5 point lead, but now that's closing. What's going on?
Well, it's kind of consistent with what we've seen in other states, that she got a big bounce after the convention, and that's kind of evaporated. I mean, she kind of went dark the last couple of weeks of August. She was doing mostly fundraising, didn't have any kind of real events, and the polls did narrow. You're seeing in Ohio, like you said, the Quinnipiac poll showing that it's certainly within the margin of error, and the Quinnipiac poll also factored in the 2 third-party candidates who are running, and that seemed to indicate that they were pulling more votes from Clinton than from Trump. So we're getting to the point where I think the polls will be fluid, but it's going to come down, as you said, to who has the better ground game operation. And Ohio is going to be kind of a test to see how important a ground game is when it comes to delivering votes for a candidate.
Bob, Hillary Clinton has been hammering Trump on television, on the ads, even though she hasn't been doing campaign stuff.
Like 6-7 to 1
but
on spending.
It's still tight.
Yeah, well, it's not so much that Donald Trump has moved his numbers up. It's Hillary Clinton's numbers are falling, and she's not a good candidate. And I think you see it here in Ohio. With all the money they're spending and with the organization they have, how can she be down by 4 points to Donald Trump? But she is. And it's the political environment. We've talked about it before. This is a totally different political environment than we've ever experienced. And, you know, the normal things like a lot of money on TV and a great ground game may not, in the end, make that big of a difference.
Chrissy, she did go dark, as Mark said. She didn't hold a whole lot of public campaign events, did a lot of fundraising, was criticized for that. But they say the campaign doesn't really start till after Labor Day. Do you expect her to regain a bit of her traction? She was in Northeast Ohio this week.
Of course. You know, I mean, I think the most predictable thing about after we saw this post-convention bounce for Hillary Clinton was that the polls would draw even or more even once again. And that will happen a couple more times. You know, Ohio is going to remain close. It's always close. Even like a decisive victory in Ohio is 3, 4 points, 5 points. So, you know, generally within the margin of errors for polls, and it's going to remain close here in Ohio. We've got these debates coming up, which is going to be kind of the next turning point. And that's when folks in Ohio will really start tuning in, and they're going to be starting to cast their ballots around that time as well.
Sandy, who's more motivated, the Eastern Ohio Trump supporters or the suburban voters who really don't like Trump?
I think the suburban voters, and I think if you look at the poll that Mark referenced where Gary Johnson did pretty well, he got 14 percentage points.
He's the libertarian
He's
candidate.
the libertarian candidate. He was really trying to make a name for himself. He was doing that, and then he really stepped in it when he was asked about Aleppo, and he said, "What's Aleppo?" And the journalist said, "You're kidding, right?" And so that dominated the news cycle for a couple days. If you are looking for an alternative to the woman you really don't like or the man you really don't trust, and you were looking at him, you're not looking at him anymore. And I think it's going to come down to people saying, who's qualified? She's clearly more qualified. And who scares you? And he clearly scares people.
What about Jill Stein? In the Quinnipiac poll, she had 4%. Not a big number, but in a tight race, 4%, those are definitely liberal voters. Those aren't going to be many Trump supporters
I just
there.
don't see her catching any traction either. And what's been interesting to watch is the Bernie people finally coming home and endorsing Hillary, and part of that's just fear of Trump.
Well, there's one issue, though, that the Clinton campaign just doesn't want to seem to deal with, and I think this is what is causing a lot of problems here in Ohio. When you ask Ohio voters who's most honest and trustworthy, they pick Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, and by a pretty good margin. And that's what it is. I mean, this email situation only gets worse and worse, drip, drip, drip. And they don't know how to deal with it. And I think that character issue and the big problem she has with that is something they're going to have to deal with if she's going to turn this around.
What about the organization, Mark? I mean, there was an article this week about how John Kasich's organization is not helping Donald Trump at all. And that could hurt Donald Trump in the fall. Is organization still going to be key, or is Bob right that all bets are off as far as our traditional campaign methods?
Yeah, I think it's still going to matter, and it will be interesting to see what impact, if any, that has. Because the Republican operation as it exists in Ohio is serving John Kasich and is not plugged into the Trump campaign. And I think where it's going to matter is in the demographics supporting or opposing the candidates and who you get out. For example, when you look at the polling, it's pretty consistent that Donald Trump does well among white working class type voters, but that even among white voters, Hillary Clinton does okay, and she certainly does dramatically better among minority voters. Even when you look at education backgrounds, for example, Trump would do better among folks who don't have a college degree, but minority voters who don't have a college degree are overwhelmingly with Hillary Clinton. So the ground game, to the effect that it can have an effect, is going to be, can you get those voters, in particular, I think, backing Hillary Clinton to the polls in the urban areas to make a difference in the race?
Christy, we've seen a lot of campaigning the past couple of weeks in Northeast Ohio. Not so much down here in Central Ohio, but almost everything is focused in Youngstown, near Cleveland. That has to be intentional.
Yeah, so that's an area where Donald Trump thinks he can get some of these blue-collar voters who have voted Democratic in the past, especially down when you get toward Youngstown. The Mahoning Valley has a kind of an unprecedented number of Republicans suddenly who support Donald Trump. It's like they don't know what to do with them all. So that's what he's focusing on right now. As Sandy mentioned, Hillary Clinton, obviously, she has that African American vote up in Cleveland really kind of locked down. Turnout is a big deal. They need to get all of those people out that came out for Obama. But she's really hoping that she can turn out some of these suburban women, especially educated people, to kind of counteract some of that Youngstown movement.
Sandy, are you surprised that there is not more enthusiasm, at least that I could see, among women for Hillary Clinton, being she would be the first female president of the United States? I mean, I don't sense that enthusiasm the same way African Americans were enthusiastic about Barack Obama 8 years ago.
No, I don't think it's at that level, but I think it's growing. And I think one of the things Hillary has going for her is all the voter suppression efforts that the Republicans have launched that specifically target communities of color. They are so bad that Republican courts are throwing out these laws. It's getting a lot of national press. And I think they are motivated to vote because they are tired of us going back to the days of the poll tax.
Now, Sandy is referring to the Golden Week decision, which was first overturned. Now the Golden Week has gone away. Bob, your response to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the Golden Week was an accident of bill drafting to begin with, and it was never to have happened that way because voters in Ohio voted and turned down big. They didn't want same-day voter registration. So it was a mistake. The Democrats have tried to take it and use it to their advantage, like everything they do with election law. And the courts now said it's no longer there, so.
There's 3 cases that are pending. There's not just the Golden Week one. There's the 2 million people who've been purged from the rolls since 2011 when John Husted became our chief elections official. And
which
then,
is federal. That's a federal requirement, Sandy.
Yeah, but
so
it just seems to have, seems to coincidentally have unfairly purged a lot more Democrats than the Republicans.
President Obama about that problem, shouldn't you?
And then there's another case that deals with the unequal enforcement of the rules on provisional ballots and absentee ballots. The urban counties tend to very strictly enforce that and throw them out. The white rural counties tend to leave them in. So those are all being
disputed.
disputed.
Sandy, you'll have to admit, Ohio has one of the most liberal early voting laws in any state in the United States. And you're not very concerned about the state of New York that has absolutely no early voting. That's what I don't like. The unfair.
I don't work in the
Ohio
state of New York.
is put to a different standard than any other state because we're a swing state and you guys want to try to take advantage of it any way you can.
And the spotlight is on Ohio more than New York because we are a swing state. So anyway, Clinton and Trump made back-to-back appearances this week in a town hall-style forum designed to test them on the role of U.S. Commander-in-Chief. Each candidate answered About 30 minutes of questions from the audience and NBC's Matt Lauer on issues related to Clinton's email server, Vladimir Putin, and the fight against terrorism.
The generals under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have not been successful.
Do you know more about ISIS than they do?
I think under the leadership of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, the generals have been reduced to rubble. They have been reduced to a point where it's embarrassing for our country.
Last night was yet another test, and Donald Trump failed yet again. We saw more evidence that he is temperamentally unfit and totally unqualified to be commander-in-chief.
Bob Clegg, Donald Trump insulted the generals and praised the leader of Russia. What kind of strategy is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's Trump. So you take it for what it's. But what I loved about that was the way that Hillary Clinton responded about the praise for Putin. And the problem is that, you know, people remember one of the first things she did as Secretary of State was that comical reset button that she went to Moscow with to try to reset our relations with Russia. And the other thing about Russia is just 4 years ago, when they were in a debate, Mitt Romney said, you know what, our biggest geopolitical enemy is Russia. The president not only disagreed with that, he went one step further and mocked him in the debate and said, let's give the 1980s back their foreign policy. Well, guess what?
Russia did invade Ukraine.
Year and a half later, Russia invaded the Ukraine. I love these Democrats and their hypocrisy. Now, in 2016, Putin's a big problem. We got to deal with him. But 2012, he wasn't. And you saw, because of the way that Clinton and Obama handled foreign policy over these last 8 years, we had the Ukraine be, invaded by Russia because they didn't take it seriously. Now, why should we take them seriously about it?
Boy, there's a lot there to unpack.
Hey,
but
it's just the facts.
But it just seems extraordinary that a candidate for president of the United States and his running mate would say that there's no argument that the leader of Russia is a better leader than the president of the United States. Whatever happened, Chrissy, to the politics stops at the water's edge? Not that it ever really existed, but the cliche was there.
It's honestly, as an observer I cover Ohio politics and honestly don't dip too much into foreign policy. As an observer of this kind of thing, it is a little bit stunning that we're at this point. I mean, there's a headline I just saw a few moments ago on television about Trump doing an interview on Russian state-sponsored television. I mean, I don't know what to make of it personally. Perhaps Mark is smarter than I am and can offer some, but this is unprecedented that we're at this situation where, we have allied ourselves as Americans with Ukraine and in this situation with Russia. So how are we here? I don't know.
It is. I mean, any other candidate says this, they'd be done. Mark, you have to admit they would be disqualified.
In fact, that was some of the reaction to this commander-in-chief forum, that if this same thing had happened 4 years ago, there'd be calls for the candidate to drop out of the race, because of the conditions have changed so much since then. And the one disappointment I had with that forum is we didn't get into nuclear policy. And the next day after, we see a test in North Korea, and the response from the candidates has been kind of predictable from the standpoint you have Donald Trump saying, well, I'm not really going to tell you what my plans are, and you can just rest assured that I'd be a strong leader and that would take care of it, and then Hillary Clinton backing the Obama administration. So the problem ultimately is we're just not getting a real good discussion about what are critical matters that are going to face the next president, and we're all at this level of just sort of like you said, bewilderment about the politics of the situation.
Sandy, I mean, one of the reasons why we didn't hear a whole lot about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy is because of this email cloud that continues to hang over her. Now, she was responsible for setting up that server, allowed it to happen. Whether or not Matt Lauer should have spent as much time on it is beside the point, but it's still an issue that dogs her and is not keep letting her get her message out.
I agree with what the Washington Post editorial page said. Enough. She's talked about it enough. They've investigated it enough, and they have found nothing out. Nothing. I can't believe how much money's been spent, our money, taxpayer money, investigating the Clintons, and we found nothing. So let's just move on and talk about other things.
The part of, sure, they asked about the emails, but the problem there is she has hid from the press for almost 300 days. Now, in that time period, the big issue that's been out there has been the emails. I think if they would have put her out there more often to take questions from the press, you wouldn't have had a situation where, with this forum, where the very first question was about emails. Once again, they don't want to address the issue. They think if they can hide her, it'll somehow magically go away. It's not going to.
All right. The battle between U.S. Senator Rob Portman and his challenger Ted Strickland was to be one of the most competitive in the country. But with Labor Day behind us, Ted Strickland's bid appears in trouble. Democratic PACs are delaying or dropping TV ad buys to support Strickland. The former governor continues to lag in fundraising, and now that is showing up in the polls. Portman now holds a 10-point lead over Strickland, and the former governor's attempts to tie Portman to Trump and free trade have so far failed. Sandy Tice, what is happening with Ted Strickland?
Other than the presidential candidates, there's no candidate in America who's had more money spent against him. And I give Rob Portman credit for running a very effective and deceptive campaign. Brent Larkin from The Plain Dealer has a column, and he said, it's hard to shed the notion that Portman left his conscience home in this race. And Larkin hasn't always been a Ted fan. Yes, there was 89 cents left in the rainy day fund. That's because the Great Recession hit and dug the hole. And Ted Strickland protected the vulnerable among us. He did some important things for higher ed and for lower ed. He gave us a good energy policy that Kasich has since taken away because we know that GOP stands for Grand Oil Party.
Why are we hearing this from you and not the Strickland campaign?
I think you're starting to see them pushing back more effectively. They have an ad now that talks about the difference on their policies on women. And Rob Portman's mom was a very strong supporter of Planned Parenthood because she understood its value and why it's important for women to have access to safe and reliable health care. And Rob voted to defund it because he thinks that's the quickest way to rise up the Republican ladder. That's a really good ad that they have on the air. I think his new ad on the rainy day fund is really good. And the Democrats are doing a tour of Ohio, and they're making this case, and I think that's going to be helpful too.
Republicans are also pulling back in Ohio, thinking this race is over.
Yeah, because Rob's doing a great job. And all the outside third-party help that they thought they were going to have to do to help him, they don't need to do. The big problem here is the Democrats picked the wrong candidate for the wrong year. This is not the year to be picking up a 75-year-old failed governor and try to run him for the U.S. Senate. People want somebody new and different. They want somebody who is able to succeed. And Ted Strickland doesn't do any of that. And they would have been much better off if they would have just let P.G. Sittenfeld, the primary the guy that primaried Strickland, to run and be their candidate in this kind of a year.
PG, Chrissy, young Cincinnati city councilman.
That's right.
Made a bit of a splash, but he was unknown around the state.
The reason you just had to say all of that is because P.G. Sittenfeld was not ready for a statewide run. So, I mean, look, Ted Strickland has struggled as a candidate. I think we all would agree on that. His campaign has struggled. I don't know if the solution is to say they should have picked P.G. Sittenfeld. Perhaps the solution is to look back at the last decade or so of what's happened in the Democratic Party and say the bench was not very deep. Ted was supposed to be the best candidate because of his name ID and because of, generally people thought he was a good guy. There is that recession thing, but this has just not worked out very well for them, and it would have been better to have someone else, perhaps.
Mark, I mean, fairly or unfairly, the state did lose all those jobs during his administration. The rainy day fund was depleted. Whether it was used wisely or not is up for debate. And that's sort of the way the politics is. I mean, the first George Bush got nailed with a recession in the early 90s and lost to Bill Clinton when he was on his way to an easy re-election.
Right, and I guess I was surprised when essentially that attack against Strickland has been as effective as it is. When it was first rolled out, it seems like 10 years ago, the ad started running about how Strickland lost 350,000 jobs in Ohio. I guess I thought that wasn't going to be that effective because that essentially was the argument of the 2010 gubernatorial race. Kasich was arguing that Strickland took Ohio into a ditch and he was going to get it out. And I guess I thought that was more baked in, where voters weren't going to sort of hold Strickland accountable for what happened with the recession. But it seems like that has had an impact. And I think maybe more importantly than that, the fact that Strickland wasn't able to raise enough money. I think that sent a signal to the national players. I think it played a role in why money's being pulled out now.
Sandy, what's the hope the Democrats have that the 10 points in Labor Day is a big number to make up?
It is a big number, but we have great hope that Trump is going to continue to step in it and say stupid things and insult women and insult Gold Star families and do the normal things that he does. People in Ohio make up their minds pretty late, usually after the World Series, and I think they're going to look at these candidates, and Donald Trump's going to just scare the daylights out of people.
And that's the problem that Democrats have this year. Their whole game plan revolves around Donald Trump screwing
But
up.
it's still a possibility. Would you
Still a
admit?
possibility, but I'd hate to have to bank everything on just that, which is what they're doing.
It would be, though, rather unprecedented to see, for instance, Hillary Clinton say win in Ohio, and then Rob Portman, win.
Not this
people
year.
don't split their ticket.
Not this year. This year, since both presidential candidates are so disliked, I think a lot of people are going to do a checks and balance thing. I don't really want to have to vote for her, but I'm going to vote for Portman to put a check on her. So just in case, I'm going to have my guy, another guy checking her.
Well, the other thing that's going to be a play at this race, and let's give Senator Portman his due. He's run a very strong campaign, and particularly a grassroots campaign to get out the vote. And what'll be interesting to see is if his get out the vote effort sort of helps Trump by getting Republicans to the polls who also vote for Trump, and how that plays out in the Senate race as well.
Maybe the irony of ironies if that happened. Ultra-conservative anti-abortion activists want Ohioans to classify abortion as murder. A ballot proposal submitted to Attorney General Mike DeWine would make any abortion for any reason illegal in Ohio. A violation would bring a charge of aggravated murder, which could result in a life prison sentence. The proposal was submitted by 3 individuals. The anti-abortion group Ohio Right to Life has nothing to do with it. Abortion rights activists denounced the move as mean-spirited and unconstitutional. Chrissy Thompson, this clearly is unconstitutional under the Roe versus Wade precedent. Is it going to go anywhere?
So, because it's clearly unconstitutional, and because it's really not where the general populace is, I mean, even if you ask people from Ohio Right to Life, for instance, this is very extreme from where those folks would be. This is
This is even farther than the heartbeat bill.
right. This is a fertilized egg.
Embryo,
Period. Yeah, exactly. And it said, even if it's done via IVF, this is pretty extreme. And so I think I'm interested to see what will happen. First of all, if they can get the number, people could pass this along and say, well, technically this language passes these. It doesn't have to pass a constitutionality check. They would have to get, nearly 400,000 signatures. If they clear that bar, I mean, based on what we know, people would not vote for this. So I don't know if somebody's going to try to put a stop to it on that level, if there'll be a court case, or if this will just kind of carry through.
Bob, does this put Republican office holders Mike DeWine, John Husted, who are going to have to check on this as it goes through the process, put them in a tough spot? They don't want to anger their pro-life supporters, but they don't want to seem extreme.
I think a couple things. Number one, both of them have jobs. And as part of their jobs, they have to deal with these kind of constitutional amendments. And they're doing it based on what the criteria is for each of them for that thing. So I don't think they can get into trouble on that. As far as just the right to life and the whole issue, I think, like Christy said, I mean, it's so extreme that I think the vast majority of right to life people, and which I am one of them, would view this as being so totally unrealistic that I don't think either one of them would suffer any kind of political consequences from it.
See, in an odd way, does this help folks like yourself who support abortion rights in that this is the proposal that is way outside the mainstream, even among the people who oppose abortion? Does this help your cause in some ways?
I don't think it does. What frightens me about this is I'm afraid this is going to get the very truly crazy people to decide that what we need to do is push something like this and make the case that Donald Trump should be the leader of the free world and appoint the Supreme Court justices. Because right now the Supreme Court's moving in the other direction, and they've made the case that some of these restrictions have actually been harmful to women's health. That's what I'm afraid of. And Mike DeWine, this is the same guy who charged us $2.3 million to fight and lose the same-sex marriage ban Cost us over $3 million to fight and lose many of the voting rights
Sandy,
cases.
this is about abortion.
I know, but I'm saying that he doesn't, he's the Attorney General, and he takes these cases all the way to the Supreme Court, even when it's clear to most normal mortals that we're going to lose, and we're the people who have to pay for it. These fiscal conservatives who like to waste my money really annoy me.
All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots, and Sandy, you're up first.
October 11th is the deadline to register to vote. And like I said before, 2 million people have been purged from the rolls, and many of them don't know it. So you can verify your vote online. You can go online and you can see if you are registered to vote. If you're not, you can re-register to vote. And even members of Bob's party, I think, should check that out. Everybody should participate.
Well, you know what? I'm going to follow up on what Sandy just said and tell everyone that Secretary of State John Husted has just mailed absentee ballot applications to all registered voters in Ohio. And I think everyone should take advantage of that because he wants to make voting in Ohio as easy as possible.
Chrissy.
I'm going to switch gears from politics and ask you to take a look at something called the Accused podcast, which is in iTunes and on SoundCloud. It's something that the Inquirer launched a couple days ago. It's a cold case from Miami University from 1978. 2 juries ruled that this guy was not guilty, and they never followed up to actually find the killer. It's really interesting.
So a serial sort of spin-off type thing?
It is a spin-off. I mean, as a huge serial fan.
Inspired by serial.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm very good friends with these gals who did this. Yep. It's spectacular.
Great. And Mark?
Labor Day is sort of the unofficial kickoff of the general election campaign, although it's been going on forever. And if Labor Day's campaigning is any indication, better buckle up in Ohio because we had all 4 principals from both parties and Bill Clinton in the state at the same time. And at one point, we even had Trump's plane and Clinton's plane on the same tarmac in Cleveland.
Wow. My biggest surprise of the week was the fact that Larry King is still on television and he's working for Russian state media. Who knew? That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. Continue the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter and at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.